16 years ago. What were you doing 16 years ago? For me, I was on a stage much like this, dressed in a full suit with a top hat, known as P.T. Barnum, trying to get fleas in a cannon into some lady's hair in the back row at a dinner theater. 16 years ago, that was beyond my experience level. That was beyond my ability. But I did it. I took those fleas. I shoved them in the cannon. I shot them as far as I could. And I knew I succeeded when the lady in the back started doing this. And I thought, if I could convince people from the stage that happened, I could probably stand here today and convince you of something probably even more important. And so I loved the opportunity 16 years ago in St. John to be there where I was looking for a full-time position. I had just gotten married to my wife, and I was looking for an opportunity to be able to get in to a full-time job. We have grads that are just graduating, and they are looking, what is next? What is going to happen? We're going to talk about that. But a moment happened where there was a guy by the name of Steve Hiltz. He was the regional director of the fellowship, and he was looking at for somebody my age that was going to be a children youth pastor at a church in Nova Scotia. And so he came to this dinner theater. He sat there, and he said to his friend, do you know anybody that could be, crazy enough to work with kids and work with teens? And the person just pointed at me as I was launching the fleas. I'm sure quickly in his head he was like, is there anybody else? Is that your best option? And anyway, so after the dinner theater was over, we met, and I talked through, and we met with the church, and I worked at Faith Baptist Church, Great Village, for 10 amazing years before coming here, going on 5 years here at the Point Church. And so it was truly an amazing experience. But the thing that I learned through that, and what we're going to talk about is this, that Steve's job was looking for somebody, and it was he just went to a dinner theater. It was kind of an everyday moment for him. But it turned out to be my milestone moment, right? His everyday moment where he was just kind of hanging out, having fun, having a good laugh, putting the feelers out, turned out to be my milestone moment. And today we have people in this room that are having milestone moments, but it is not without the help of somebody beside them having an everyday moment and the power in the everyday. And so we're going to talk about that. But first I want to just welcome those that are watching right now, our Chatham site, our Bathurst site, and those watching online. And maybe if you're tuning in a little bit later watching this, we're glad that you're here. And today we're talking about how God is greater than the hills and valleys. And what does that mean? And so we're going to jump into the bottom line, and I'm going to just tell you this is what we're talking about. This is it right here. Use your everyday moments to help someone achieve their milestone. Let me say that again. Use your everyday moments to help someone achieve their milestone. We're going to talk about milestones and what are milestones, how important are they? Because the more we understand that, the more we understand what God wants us to do in the everyday, right? And so we're going to dive in here. But let's just kind of zoom out. Let's talk about what is a milestone, right? We think we know what it is, but let's just kind of dive in. Milestones are this. They mark and celebrate a significant moment or change in a person's story, right? A milestone marks and celebrates a significant moment or change in a person's story. We have a lot of that happening right now. A lot of things going, I have now graduated. I am no longer tied to that school, walk those hallways that is behind me. Now, I was in a few different schools this past week, and there's a whole lot of crying, okay? As much as there's people excited, there's a whole lot of tears. There's one girl, I didn't think your body had that much fluid to cry that much. I made fun of her, then I apologized, because I was like, how is that even happening? And I was in awe, I was taking notes. And she was like, I'll never see them. And I was like, it's a big deal. Milestones, they mark and they celebrate a significant moment or change, and it was the change that took it to the crying. And so this is interesting. So let's kind of break it down in two ways, the everyday and the milestone, the significant moment. The everyday moments look like this. They create a rhythm of our lives. They leave behind subtle memories that give us history. Now for me, the way I think about it this way is I remember getting off the school bus, and I remember smelling homemade bread. And I had a decent driveway that kind of went up, and I don't remember walking up the driveway most of the times because my nose just carried me up as I smelled the bread. And then my grandmother would take, butter, not margarine, but butter, and let you just put it all over the rolls and then lick the rolls. And then she'd get mad that you licked it, but little did she know that said, no, these are all mine. And not only that, but I would take that in a bowl of molasses. And I'd eat it. And my wife and I had talked about this before, and she's like, that's the most disgusting thing ever. You may say you're a picky eater, but you like molasses? Doesn't even make sense. But I'm like, oh, you just got to be from Miramichi. Molasses and fresh bread. And those are they're not a significant moment, but they're an everyday moment that leave behind a subtle memory that gives us that history, that gives us that moment that says, I remember this, I remember that. Especially as people pass away, those memories just hold a little bit more special place for us, right? But the difference between that and a significant moment is they change the direction of our lives. These significant moments, these milestones, they leave behind impactful memories that highlight the course of our story, right? If you could say, okay, what does the life of Geoff McLean look like? It's really based upon this. It's not based upon this. It was based upon, I remember when this happened, this significant moment. It's a highlight reel of my life. And at funerals, we tend to share the significant moments. But the power, and this is what I love about when people start sharing stories of the everyday moments, when they say, she always used to do this, and how powerful it was to somebody else, right? Even though she always did that, it didn't mean much. She always wrote cards. She always wrote a little thank you note. She always made a little extra pie just for me. She always did this. He always helped me fix the car. He always was there whenever I needed. We always went fishing. It was the everyday moments that to them wasn't a big deal, but to you was significant, right? And so today we want to realize those milestones aren't milestones without the everyday moments. If everyday moments are like pages of our lives, then milestones are like the turning point in the story. Where you're like, ooh, that got good, right? The everyday is just page, significant moment, milestones, kind of turn that story. Now, as I'm putting pressure on the everyday, sometimes you would say, Geoff, but my everyday is not that special. My everyday is just kind of blah. Well, let me tell you this. I was reminded of this, that sometimes we feel like a number. Oh, I'm in this room and nobody noticed me. I'm just one of X number of people. But every number has a name. And every name has a story. And every story matters to God, right? We matter to God. We absolutely do. And so to take that number and realize to God, I actually matter, then the everyday matters. So as we talk about this a little bit more, I want to lean into a guy named Zacchaeus in the Bible. Okay, Zacchaeus was an interesting man, and if you grew up singing the song, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, then we're going to just dive in and hear his story. It's only 10 verses long, but if you take your Bibles out or the Bible's underneath the chair, you can turn to page 955 as we look in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10. And we're going to dive into Zacchaeus and realize how important the everyday moment is and how it impacts milestones. Luke chapter 19 starts like this. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. I find this very interesting because Jesus was entering Jericho and was passing through. Now, if I was passing through Newcastle, it means I wasn't here to stay. I'm just passing through to Douglastown, right? I'm passing through to Millerton. I'm going through. I'm in Bathurst. I'm going through to Beresford, right? Like I'm passing through. I'm not here. I don't have a plan to stay here for 3 days. I'm just passing through. But a man was there as he's passing through by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector. Now, when we talk to kids, we do things like tax collector, we make it dramatic because a tax collector, especially a chief tax collector, wasn't a guy in the community that people just loved, right? It wasn't somebody to say, hey, buddy. It's like, give me your money. Okay, why can't we be friends, right? And so he not only was a chief tax collector, but he was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he couldn't see over the crowd. That's frustrating. Now, I'm not short, but I'm not tall. And I remember in grade 7, I was the shortest guy in my class. And the reason why I knew it is because we had opportunity to actually erase the whiteboard, or actually it was a chalkboard at the time for me, and erase the chalkboard. And I couldn't get the top of the chalkboard, right? So you're kind of like trying to get it, and your whole class is behind you going, really? You asked him to do that? And then it wasn't really like I kind of could pretend. And then my teacher in grade 7 said, it's okay, you're vertically challenged. And I was like, is that a compliment? And I was like, no, it's not. And it just broke everything in me for about 5 seconds. But it was like, what, I'm vertically challenged? And so I worked the hardest to grow as hard as I could all year long. It didn't work. But eventually I did. And I can appreciate what it means to be short, what you can't do, what other people can do. You can't see what other people can see, right? And so Zacchaeus has lived with this. He's a grown man. He knows what he can't do. And so he hears Jesus is coming through, and he's got to do something about it. So he ran ahead, and he climbed a sycamore fig tree. Okay, he wanted to see Jesus, since Jesus was coming that way. So he said, okay, Jesus is coming this way. I'm going to run ahead. I'm going to climb that tree. I'm going to see him. That's how I'm going to figure it out. See, when you're short, you figure out ways to do that. You have a stool to get up into the cupboard, right? And my grandmother growing up had a telephone book to drive. Okay, sat. You figure it out. Doesn't mean it's right, but you figure it out. When Jesus reached the spot where he was up in the tree, he looked up and he said to him, now, just pause here for a second. You're walking along, Jesus is walking along, he's got his disciples, there's a crowd, obviously, and there's a guy in the tree, right? Like, of course you're going to look up. It's a grown man in a tree. You're going to be like, what you doing? Now, for me, I wouldn't say anything. I was like, there's a grown man in the tree, and I just keep walking. That's what naturally comes to me. And we're going to get to that in a second. But Jesus says, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. Jesus is passing through. Let's not forget this. Jesus is passing through. He doesn't have plans to stay and stop. Jesus is just in an everyday moment right now, right? Every day, he's just like, okay, we're walking through. This is just another day. We're getting to our destination. This is just another day. It wasn't like, we're going to get in here and we're going to meet a guy. It wasn't a planned stop. So when Jesus is every day, he sees an opportunity. And he says, you know what? I'm going to pause because I realize how important these opportunities are. And so what happens is this. Verse 7, all the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. Jesus is going to be a guest to a sinner, right? So obviously, Zacchaeus, a little bit, who he is, to the crowd, they don't like him, right? He's a sinner. He's somebody who disobeys God. He doesn't follow God. Why would Jesus hang out with him? But Zacchaeus stood up later at the house, and he said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. See, when you come in contact with Jesus, you change. Amen. There's no plan B. There's no it doesn't happen. You change. Jesus knew the power of his everyday could change somebody and make it their milestone moment. And Zacchaeus had a milestone moment because Zacchaeus wasn't looking for Jesus to change his eternity, right? It wasn't like, hey, if I can meet Jesus, then I can go to heaven. I grew up where I just heard that a bit more. I heard more of the side of just follow Jesus so you can have a place in heaven. And what I failed to miss is that, no, that's great, but he changes your today. He changes you now. And that is so amazing. Don't forget that. And so Zacchaeus knew that if he was here today, he'd say, no, Jesus changed me today. And we find out it this way. Verse 9, Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house. Today. Because this man too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Amen. Today is the day of salvation. It wasn't like, hey, now you'll be with me in paradise. No. It wasn't that. It was today is the day. And so because Zacchaeus found a way to find Jesus, Jesus did all the work and found him, right? Salvation came to his house. Jesus could have easily said, I'm just going to keep on going. I'm not staying here. I got plans somewhere else. But he knew the power of the everyday moment. And Jesus' everyday moment was Zacchaeus' milestone moment. Now, let me ask this. If this happened, what if we saw everyone like they were made in the image of God? Let me say it this way. If you're walking along with Jesus and you see a man in the tree, like I alluded to earlier, I think I would go, there's a guy in the tree. There's a grown man in the tree. What is going on? And I would keep walking by. That's what would first come to my mind. Whether I acted on it or not, that's what would come to my mind, right? What is going on? But see, when you see everybody as if they were made in the image of God, which they are, then it changes your whole approach. You go, that there man is made in the image of God, and he has climbed a tree for a reason. We're going to find out. Zacchaeus, come on down. What's going on? Well, I'm going to go to your house. I get a crowd follow me. That's me and you. Let's go to your house. Let's find out why you're doing this. Because if you're made in the image of God, you matter, right? Every number has a name. Every name has a story. Zacchaeus' story mattered to God. And today, he met the Lord. And today, salvation has come upon his house. So what if we used our everyday moments to help someone achieve their milestone? If we're going to actually help somebody achieve their milestone, what about those people? Those people are made in the image of God. It changes everything. Now it's not just about me. This person matters to God. And because they matter to God, they matter to me. Let's break it down in a few different ways. There's 3 different ways I want to talk about milestones just to understand the power of these moments. Milestones are always celebrated in community. They're always celebrated in community. So if you're like, what is that big moment? There's a community. And for Zacchaeus, you want to talk about a moment. I am sure if they were muttering that he's a sinner and he started giving half of his possessions to the poor, 4 times the amount of people that he cheated, I'm sure that word got around, right? And there was a celebration that had happened in his life, that his family celebrated what he did. But not only that, milestones connect past, present, and future. Right? They connect the past, the present, and the future. Every milestone is an opportunity to celebrate history. Hey, congratulations. You worked so hard up until this point. We want to celebrate that moment. But it helps clarify the present. Wow, you graduated. That's amazing. You accomplished that goal. And it leans into the next question. Now what? What's going to happen now? What can we imagine the future will hold for you? Zacchaeus knew the decision that he made to follow Christ, that it would change his past, right? That he would not do the things he did anymore that caused that. If I cheated anyone in the past, in the future, I'm going to repay them 4 times, right? He knew his past, and he knew that it was going to affect his future. But he knew his present. He said, you know what? Right now, when I encounter Jesus and that milestone I have, I'm going to give half of my possessions. Half of my possessions. He is a wealthy man. He's giving half of his possessions to the poor. Jesus changed him. And in the future, I guarantee his reputation is not the same, right, than it once was. He wasn't muttered as, that sinner. Jesus is going to go with that sinner. I'm sure that's not his reputation anymore. And that milestone that he had reminds us of a bigger story. That God is to work. It's not just about my little world. There's something bigger. And I love hearing some of the stories of people graduating. And I heard of one story of a person went back to school. And I'm like, wow, you're going to now go into this profession. You're going to affect people's lives for the better because you chose to have this milestone moment. Because somebody used their everyday moment to encourage you to go make a difference. And now your new profession is going to impact so many more people than you currently were. That's amazing, that milestone. And so one of the things at the Point Church, we talk about 6 milestones for families. And so the challenges right now is I'm going to list off, we're going to kind of run through them quickly, 6 milestones we want to say if you have kids or you know of kids, from the time they're born until they graduate grade 12, here's 6 things we say, these are 6 milestones we want to celebrate with families, and so here they are. Beginning, parent-child dedication. We truly believe, start it off right. Give your child to the Lord and say, God, as a parent, I want to raise my kid to follow Christ. There's no greater gift than to give me a child, and I want to give that back and say, hey, help me do that. And so as a church, we do a parent-child dedication where we actually take an opportunity where the parents can say publicly, hey, I want to raise my kid as best I can, and I invite you in to help me. And it's a really cool moment. We want to celebrate the first chapter of life. The second one is wisdom, first day of school. This is always a fun one. It's celebrating the potential to discover and learn. Now, we had some parents that just had kindergartners graduate. Big deal. Like, I saw kindergarten graduations bigger than grade 12 graduations. Okay? And now we have a whole new slew of parents getting their kindergartens ready to go to school for the first time, and it's fun. It's so fun because it's like, okay, we should put you on the bus, but we're probably not. We'll probably discuss it and reevaluate it when you're in grade 4. But right now, don't take that away from me. I got to drive you to school. And then counseling happens and stuff to the kid in grade 4 because their mom's still dropping them off. But it's a big deal. And then the kid goes to school and is like, what teacher are you going to get? Oh, good, it's the good one. Who's the bad one? Right? Don't tell that teacher. And then, I hope they eat their food because if they don't, they're going to starve because I feed them 8 times a day. They got to make sure. And so I'll put graham crackers in their shoes so they'll know where they are. Like, I've seen this, true story. Not the shoe, that's a lie. And then they keep going. And it's like, they're whose friend? Who are they going to become friend? I really hope that they have the right friends. And they start off in kindergarten with the right friend because if they don't, it's going to mess them up for life. I'm like, just get new friends. It's not that hard. Trust me. People did it to me. And first day of school is super important. So we want to celebrate that as a milestone. This one's huge. Faith, trust in Jesus. We want to make sure that people have an opportunity to trust in Jesus and celebrate the decision to follow Christ. We have a baptism coming up here in a few weeks, and this is huge. This is a milestone that we're celebrating. People that have made decisions for Christ, and they are publicly saying to us, hey, I made a decision for Christ. I want to let you know. And you say, welcome to the family. We are so excited. Celebrate that milestone. Identity, coming of age. This one is always the weirdest of the 6, okay? Because basically it's known as puberty. As soon as you say that, everybody goes, oh, what? I don't like it. I don't know what it is. I don't want to. Can we just skip the fast forward button? But at the end of the day, this is probably the most important one in a way because it is their journey toward adulthood. Okay, this is where they start shifting and becoming an adult and start showing leadership and responsibility and just that freedom starts to come along that way. But statistics show that preteens, okay, going into middle school, their brains hit a reset button and basically they go back to like a 3-year-old. So if you're frustrated at your preteen, middle schooler, or somebody else's, it's because they're like a 3-year-old. It's not their fault. They just hit a reset button. They're trying to figure it out. And one of the things is they have a hard time processing future. They can't know, like they just don't know, like, okay, tomorrow's coming. I don't know what tomorrow is. Just wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow's never going to come. Oh my goodness, here's a stopwatch. Just count the numbers, okay? Keep you busy. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. So as a church, we recognize how important this is, and this fall we're working hard to really lean into that preteen age to help us as a church, to help parents to say, hey, we want to come alongside even better and figure out how to shift this milestone in a great way as they figure out identity. The 5th one is freedom, driver's license. Wow, this is exciting and literally the most scariest one of all. I've talked to somebody and they're like, nope, my daughter's not getting her driver's license until she's 25. And I'm like, I guarantee you're going to reevaluate when you're driving her 4 times a day back and forth because it's not dropping her off, it's picking her up, and that's one trip, and she's got 3 things going on. Life gets busier, but it's like, no, I don't trust her. And I'm like, no, I agree, I don't trust her either, but we have to, some along the way, we have to trust her. We have to trust him. And what a huge moment that is. Don't let it be a negative thing. Let it be a positive thing. We want to celebrate a significant step toward independence. And so we want to run and celebrate with them. The last one, what we're doing today as well, is graduation. Huge. Moving on. This is probably the biggest in some ways because everybody knows it's coming. And everybody celebrates it. If you're on a sports team, you're celebrating. If you're in school, you're celebrating it. Everybody celebrates this. Grandparents, people fly out, can do lots of crazy stuff. It's celebrating the transition toward vocation and career. This is huge. And so what we want to finish with this is realizing that these are milestones we have to celebrate because they're big deals. You got to celebrate them, okay? But it's recognizing that the everyday moments are important to get these milestones to happen. It's showing up. It's going to school every day, right? It's, you know what, I just got to put my hours in. I got to keep pushing through. And so we want to realize how important that is. But as we look at Zacchaeus, I want to ask you a couple questions. As we realize the big milestone he had as Jesus used his everyday moment is this. Have you ever felt like Zacchaeus? Have you ever felt like him? Small, just kind of pushed to the side, hard to see, not really felt like you're part of the inn. Maybe you felt lost. He was lost in that crowd, right? You're trying to figure out how do I get around? I'm nobody. I'm just a number. Maybe you thought this isn't really where I ended up. I thought Zacchaeus maybe thought, you know what? When I'm this old, I'm going to be this. And maybe chief tax collector is what he wanted to be, but at the end of the day, when a crowd mutters you're a sinner and doesn't want you to be with Jesus, is that really where he wanted to end up? Obviously not, because he encountered Jesus and his life changed, right? Some of us feel like we're not really where we want to be, where we thought we would be, right? You graduated and you're like, this is where I'm going to go, this is what I'm going to do, and then you fast forward and you realize, that's not really where I thought I was going to end up. I thought I was going to be this. I didn't see that coming. Whoops, that happened. Right? But here's the thing. What we learn from Zacchaeus is there's always an opportunity to have that milestone and say, you know what? Jesus is going to change my everyday. It's never too late. It's going to happen. And I love this. To remind ourselves, did somebody ever take the time out of their everyday to impact your life? Because they did. For me, there was a lady named Mary Tozer. And Mary was like a second grandmother to me. And then when I was just growing up, she fed me, looked after me, loved on me. And it was grade 11, grade 12. She said to me, Geoff, I think you should be a teacher. And I said, I don't see that in me. I just literally am trying to get out of school. I don't want to get a job where I'm still in school for the rest of my life. That just doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm weird. That doesn't make sense to me. And she said, no, I can see that. And it's people in their everyday moments believing in you that changes and makes you have those milestone moments. And I remember having other people continue to add on to that and believe in that and say, Geoff, no, we see that. You should keep going. And it gave me the courage to go and to have those milestones that I started off the first today. We're saying somebody said, hey, I have a job for you. And for 10 years, I was able to do that, and I loved it and be here for almost 5. Like it's those little moments that somebody, wasn't big to them. They were making bread, putting their cat out the door, and they said something for 5 minutes to you. Wasn't big to them, but to me, it was a milestone moment. And sometimes we discredit those moments that we're giving somebody else, right, to have those moments. We think it's just an everyday moment. We're waiting for that big special moment. One of the greatest commands ever given is found in Mark 12, 30, 31. What is the greatest commandment? Jesus says, to love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love my neighbor as myself. Love God, love others. And if we're going to love God and love others, when we love others, and like we said, what if we saw everybody like they were made in the image of God? It would change our everyday moment, right? And our everyday moment can influence somebody else's milestone moment. And there's people graduating right here in this room that they can turn and say, yep, that's an everyday moment person right there that invested in me to make me where I am today. And I couldn't be without it. So don't underestimate those everyday moments. So I'm going to leave you with this. What's next? What's your milestone? What's next on your list? Oh, I want to do this. Don't give up. Don't say, it's too late. I should have did it 2 years ago. I should have did it 5 years ago. It's too late for me. There's a milestone that Jesus wants to celebrate in you, but one of the biggest milestones you can celebrate is having a relationship with him. And if you have that relationship with him, maybe you just need a little fresh restart this summer. You say, you know what? Yeah, I just need to get rechecked. I need to start a better rhythm. Because if I need to start realizing who God is, and I need to start realizing that other people are made in the image of God, you know what? I just need a fresh restart. Thank you, Geoff. I need that. Maybe it's being baptized. You say, yeah, I've made that decision, but I haven't told people. I really haven't publicly done that. Well, in a few weeks, like I said, we're going to do that. Join us and right in your grip room say, you know what, I'm interested. Let me have that conversation. We'd love to talk to you about that. Maybe we talked the 6 milestones for families. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's somebody you know. You know what? You need to dedicate your child. You need to do that. Make that important. I'm going to use my everyday moment to encourage you to walk with you, set that up, make that happen. Right? There's something there. But maybe it's not just necessarily about you. How can you encourage somebody else? Maybe you know somebody that needs Jesus. And you can say, you know what? I'm going to encourage you to climb that tree and see Jesus because he's coming. I'm going to be that person to help you do that. I'm going to encourage you to do that. No, it's not going to be weird to climb that tree. Just go do it. Go do it. Jesus is too important. Hey, you know what? We'll go talk to Pastor Kevin about baptism. I'll go with you. Yeah, let's go talk about that. Right? Just what can you do in your everyday to change somebody's milestone that's going to change and alter their future? We're going to take a couple minutes. I'm going to ask the band to come up at this time. And in your copy of the latest, there's a little card that says congratulations. And so I just want you to pull that out. And for the next 2 minutes, I'm encouraging you to use your everyday moment and write a little bit of advice to our grade 12 grads. And we're going to take that information and we're going to turn it into a really nice canvas that we're going to give the grade 12 grads that has your information, the point, church, loving on them. And we're going to give it to them. So when they're in their dorm at university or just at home working, they're going to look at this and be reminded that you're cheering them on. You got this. You got this. You're with them, celebrating in your everyday their milestone. And so we're encouraged.